Hi everyone, and apologies for being a bit late this week. Welcome back to my first impressions of Inside Number 9 Series 6, where today we'll be discussing Episode 4, Hurry Up and Wait. So pour yourself a glass of tropical Lucozade if it's your birthday, and let's begin. Hurry Up and Wait takes place behind the scenes of an ITV true crime drama centred around the disappearance of a young child. The shoot takes place on location, close to where the baby boy was abducted 20 years ago. We follow James, an actor who has a bit part in the series, as he's pushed around by runners and sits in the trailer waiting for his big scene. But this isn't Hollywood, and the caravan in question also happens to be the home of a local family, who may or may not have been in the area during the time of the abduction. Cue personality clashes, many awkward silences, and the sneaking suspicion that this family may know something but aren't letting on. Now, in my humble opinion, Series 6 has been exceptionally strong so far, and I have to say this wasn't my favourite episode. Don't get me wrong, I still liked it. Plus, you know me, and I like to talk about the positives, and there are plenty of them here. So we'll be discussing these before we move into spoiler talk, and as always, I'll give you guys the heads up before we start. So, first of all, I think this is a really great premise with a lot of potential. While filming for TV can be very exciting, there is a lot of extremely tedious waiting around in between, and I can personally vouch for that because I have worked as a TV extra in the past. Fortunately, I never had to wait around in some stranger's home, which I imagine must be horribly awkward, and the runners were actually nice to us and nowhere near as ruthless as Joe. But while you're waiting around watching people set up and doing the same scenes over and over again, you do tend to end up in some funny situations, and I'd imagine Steve and Reese have experienced many of these over the years. And while backstage shenanigans might not be instantly relatable to most of the people watching, Inside Number 9 usually does a great job of showing us the places and stories we never get to see. And because this is Inside Number 9, there's a real sense of discomfort and creepiness combined with the humour, and in this episode we jump right in there with Bev. Straight away we're treated to the bizarre and somewhat unsettling sight of a grown woman in a dressing gown carrying a doll. Freddy Fruitcake, anyone? Donna Preston did a great job with this role, alternating between playful and childlike to intense and unhinged at the drop of a hat. The family also includes Polly McLean as Bev's busybody mother Una, and if you remember her as Mrs. Doyle from Father Ted, you possibly got a chuckle when she offered Reese a cup of tea. Good thing he accepted too, as she can be very persuasive. Rounding off the cast is Steve Pemberton as the slightly scary Stan, who gets straight on James's case and isn't impressed with his career choice. It sort of reminded me of an old Monty Python sketch where the son is a coal miner and the father is a poet. Finally, I have to give special mention to Adrian Dunbar, who was fantastic. I always enjoy it when actors play themselves as divas and arseholes, and he really went for it in this episode. I can imagine this was probably a lot funnier if you watched him in Line of Duty, which I've never seen, but it's still entertaining to see him getting the star treatment from the crew and hogging the limelight at every turn. He's even standing in front of Reese in the poster, which is a nice touch. Surprisingly though, I found a lot of the humour in this episode didn't quite land for me. Maybe that's the risk you run when you opt for so many long, awkward silences, which can just end up being, well, long and awkward. Either you burst into giggles or you don't, and if you don't, then you're just sort of left hanging. Also, the culture clash between the TV people and the family felt a tiny bit forced in places. I get that the TV people are trying to work in a high-pressure job and can come across as insensitive, as we saw in Series 2 with Seance Time. But calling a home small and dingy right out loud in front of the people who live there seemed tactless beyond belief. Then there was the brief exchange on Shakespeare's War of the Roses cycle between James and Stan, which felt a bit like they were trying to recreate the dynamic of Iris Krell and Judy Levinson from the League of Gentlemen. The difference there was that Mrs. Levinson was out of touch and extremely pretentious, which I don't think was meant to be the case with James. Having said that, I still got some good laughs out of the episode, and it also got to some very unexpected places later on. It's definitely worth a watch, and I hope you enjoy it. Besides, these are just my own opinions, and I've seen other people saying that they thought the episode was hilarious, so if that's the case, fantastic, more power to you. Plus, as I've always said, any episode of Inside Number 9 is still better than pretty much anything else on TV right now, and Hurry Up and Wait is no exception. Right, well, I think we're just about ready to start with some spoiler talk, so if you haven't seen it, then feel free to check out now, and I'll see you again next week. For everyone else, let's talk about some of the finer plot points, and of course, that ending. Okay, so about baby Ryan. While that was certainly a grim and shocking reveal, it just ended up leaving me with more questions. In fact, I ended up having a conversation right afterwards about how that hand was still holding together, not being sure if the skin and cartilage would have rotted away by then. And yes, I've been looking up articles on human decomposition since the episode aired, just in case my internet search history wasn't disturbing enough already. But more to the point, how did the baby's body end up being disguised as a doll, and how many of the family were in on the secret? Even on rewatch, it isn't clear. It doesn't look like Una knows the whole story, or maybe she does and she's just a very good actor who keeps it up even in private. I feel like Stan must have had something to do with it, as concealing a corpse doesn't seem like something 10-year-old Bev would have managed on her own. Remember, this was a girl who took a baby out of its pram thinking it was a doll. And how did she avoid the obvious unpleasantness, leakage, smells, etc., from attracting attention? In the podcast, the writers say she must have pickled it or kept it somehow, but that's as far as they go. I know it's a minor thing and I'm probably too hung up on all the gory details, but for me it did take away from the full impact of the ending. There was also the detective element of the story, which didn't engage me quite as much as it probably should have. I just thought it was too much of a stretch for James to assume that Bev was baby Ryan all grown up and disguised as a girl. The red tracksuit and the hair removal cream weren't really that much to go on. Tracksuits were very popular in the UK at the time, and hair removal products are widely used by women everywhere, though we try to be discreet about it. Also, the comment about peeing sitting down didn't seem that odd to me, at least not in the way it was intended. I just thought that it might be because the bathroom was very small, or maybe they could be seen at the window if they were standing up, or maybe someone once got some wee on the floor, resulting in an argument that Bev overheard. Or maybe they're just another weird family with weird toilet rules. At least James would have been allowed to pass a solid. Apart from the birthday reference and the inconsistencies with the characters' stories, which did seem a bit suspicious, the only real piece of evidence that had me going was the dinosaur blanket. But even then, I thought that just meant that the family had been involved somehow, not that Bev was actually Ryan. At any rate, the blanket is quickly dismissed as a prop only moments later, so I thought that was that. But instead, James goes full Columbo and, for lack of a better phrase, makes an absolute tit of himself. I think this could have been better seeded as James getting far too obsessed with the case he's fictionalising, but it felt like that obsession came from nowhere. He starts off fairly detached from the real-life incident, thinking of it as more of a drama script, then out of nowhere seems hell-bent on cracking the case. Maybe it's fulfilling some other ambition, as James did mention that he wanted to be a detective as a kid, but that's not very much to go on. I think it was a missed opportunity to show an eager young actor getting far too into his role, however minor, and the source material, which is always a sensitive area when it comes to true crime. Also, just a side note, how come nobody heard him making those accusations right outside the caravan when we've already established that the walls are paper thin? I was sure there was going to be some repercussions for that one. Aside from that, and I'm probably being a total nitpick by this point, some of the lines felt less like something the character would actually say, and more like something that would give more ambiguity to the plot. For instance, Bev tells James that she is celebrating a birthday, which feels awkwardly phrased in order to hint that it might not be her own. I honestly thought it was her Dolly's birthday at first, which it kinda sort of was. I think if she'd said, "I'm drinking birthday champagne," or something like that, it would have felt a bit more natural. On the same note, it was a bit strange to hear Una saying that her daughter is such a tomboy while she's wearing a pink dressing gown and cuddling a doll. That's not really the image most of us have of a tomboy, speaking as someone who very much was one. It might have made more sense to say that she's so unladylike, which is exactly the kind of thing a mother would say when her daughter's sitting with legs akimbo. Not the drama group, just the posture. Again, I'm probably nitpicking, but dialogue is important and those two lines really stood out as awkward to me. And while I didn't spot the hair again this week, really it could have been anywhere among all those knickknacks, I did pick up on one possible Easter egg. Joe mentions that Sheridan was the one who left the blanket behind, which might be a reference to the actress Sheridan Smith. Not only has she been in Number 9 before, but she also played a part in an ITV crime drama alongside Reece Shearsmith. It's called The Widower, and is very good if you like true crime and want to see Reece being extra creepy. Also, I must say I got a chuckle out of the phrase Dumbo 1, seeing as Dumbo is probably the only classic Disney film that didn't get a low-rent straight-to-video sequel in the late 90s. Apparently one was planned, but then cancelled. Didn't stop them doing a live-action remake though. So those were my thoughts on Hurry Up and Wait. I hope this didn't come across as too negative, as there was still a lot to enjoy in this episode, and it looks like other fans liked it a lot more than I did. Feel free to tell me how wrong I am in the comments, subscribe for more number 9 content, and I'll be back again next week to discuss episode 5, How Do You Plead? Now, I am very excited about that episode, as we'll be seeing the return of Derrick Jacoby, who you may remember from series 3 in The Devil of Christmas. I mean, who could forget? I'm curious to know if he'll be playing the same character, and if this is perhaps the first follow-on episode of the series, which could be very interesting indeed. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll see you all next time.